This is Seema Saini, Assistant Professor, and today I am going to discuss the topic of Introduction to Statistic. So, Introduction to Statistic, basically the word statistic convey a variety of meaning to people in different walk of life. And statistic means the numerical description to most the people, right? The purpose of the statistic is to manipulate, summarize, investigate data so that useful information can we can take it for decision making information result. So now we can say the statistic, while we collect the data through surveys, right? And after collecting the data, we have to present our data into graphs and charts. And then after presenting the data, we have to classify our data in the form of average, you can say mean, median, mode. We can calculate the average with the help of the mean, median, mode, and this variation with the help of standard deviation, variance, etc. And then after that, if we want to take the analysis of that data, then there are various tools and techniques like t-test, z-test, ANOVA. Okay, there are so many techniques to analyze the data, and after analyze the data, we can make the decision for future also. So here statistic is collecting data. After collecting data, presenting data, then characterize data, data analysis, and then after that making decision for future. So, definition of statistic. So, there are broadly divided into two categories. One is definition in plural sense and then definition in singular sense. So, now come to the definition in plural sense. Plural sense means the statistic refers the numerical data or statistical data only. In numbers only, we can say plural sense is when we collect the data in numbers only. So, this is plural sense. So, under this, the statistic refers to numerical statements of facts related to any field of inquiry, such as data related to income, expenditure, population. Okay, so while we collect the data of the income of the employee, of expenditure of the household, population of the country, so we can collect it in numbers only. So this is called the population, this is called the plural sense only. Now comes to the features of statistic in plural sense. So there are many features of the plural sense. So first one is the aggregate of facts. What does it mean, aggregate of facts? So as I just convey the previous one, when we collect the data into numerical forms, so our data should be aggregate. Okay, so it could not be a single number. So there should be many numbers with us and then numerically expressed. So the second one is data only in number. Then after that we can then after that we can analyze that data into statistical form, and like marks of the students. If we'll collect the marks of the students, so this is in numbers. If I'll collect the only one student number marks in numbers, so this is not statistic, right? And then affected by multiplicity of the causes. So there are many factors, those influence to the other factors also. Like if I just take the example of wheat here, wheat is depend upon so many factors like rain, right, the climate, the temperature. So there are so many factors, those affect the productivity of the wheat. And then after that reasonable accuracy. While we collect the data, so our data should be accurate. If our data is not accurate, then we cannot find the correct result through our data. And then predetermined purpose. So before collecting the data, we have to specify our objectives, why we are going to collect the data and for what purpose we are going to collect the data, right? So this is the predetermined purpose. So After plural sense, come to the next, the singular sense. So what is the singular sense? So there is this, in singular sense, the term statistic refers to the science in which we deal with the techniques. There are various methods and techniques, as I conveyed in the previous slides, right? There are many techniques and methods for collecting the data, for classify the data, for presenting the data, analyzing the data and interpreting the data. So now I am just going to, in coming slide I am going to discuss all these features of the collecting and classifying, presenting, analyzing and interpreting, right? And then come to the definition of Croxton and Cordon. Statistic may be defined as a collection, presentation, analysis and interpretation of numerical data or numerical facts only. Right. So now come to the feature of the singular sense. So first one is the collection of data. It is decided as to how, when, where and what kind of data are to be collected. Organization of the data. The second step is statistical method is to organize the collected data, and then after that presentation of the data, and to make the data, intelligible, brief and attractive, we have to present our data into table. So we should simplify our data while we are going to present the data into form of tables, diagrams or graphs only, and then after that analysis of the data. So to draw conclusion for our study, we have to analyze our data with by using various tools and techniques, right? After discussing the plural sense and the singular sense, now come to the scope of the statistic. So I have just mentioned the three terms over here for discussing the scope of the statistic. One is the nature, second is the subject matter, and third is the limitation. So now come to the first one, which is nature. So we can discuss the nature, we can study the nature is to find out where statistic is, whether statistic is science or art, right? So as a science, it studies the statistical data, and as a art it makes use of data to solve the problem of real life. Then come to the subject matter. So I can I can describe over here about the statistical scope with the help of the subject matters after statistic after dividing it into two parts. One is the descriptive statistic and then second is the inferential statistic. Well, I'm going to discuss the descriptive statistic. So it describes the data and consists of the methods and techniques to explain the characteristics of that particular data. This is called the descriptive statistic. Suppose if I'll collect the data, income data, and if I'll just want to know the average of that particular income, so I can calculate the average through mean. So this is the descriptive statistic only, and we can represent our data into graph also. So this is the descriptive statistic, right? And after descriptive statistic, the inferential statistic. What is the inferential statistic? When we make the decision for future, so with the help of the tools or techniques, so this is the inferential statistic. So it deals with the methods which describe the characteristics of the population, or making decision concerning population on the basis of the sample result. So whenever we are going to collect the data of any event or any object, so we must first of all we must collect the data into subject, right? Because population data collection is very difficult for us. So that's why we just collect the data into sample form, and after collecting the data into sample form, so whatever the tools and techniques will implement on the sample size, so it represent the population result only. Then come to the functions of the statistic. So functions of the statistic, first one is the expression of facts in numbers, right? So one of the principal functions of statistic is to express the facts related to different phenomena in numbers only. And then after that, so what does it mean? It means whatever we are going to collect the data, our data should be in numbers form only. Then after that, we are able to present our result into statistical form. And then come to the simple presentation. So the data must be presented in a simple form so that it becomes easy to understand. And then it compares facts, and another function of statistic is to compare the one data to another data. Suppose if we are going to collect the data of a particular company, and we are going to compare that particular company data for the another company data, so we can compare the data into statistical form, and then it helps other science also. So the data, whatever data we are going to collect it here for a particular purpose, we are not going to use only for the statistical purpose. There are other science also, like many laws of economics, laws of demand, law of supply, where we can use that data into statistical form. And then come to the it helps in forecasting. So it helps in forecasting changes in future with regards to a particular problem. This is very important uses and importance of statistic. So I have described various importance of the statistic over there. First one is the importance for administrator and or the administration purpose, and importance for business or industry or a particular industry, particular agriculture, and importance in economics, importance for politicians, and importance for social reformers, and then importance in the field of science and research, and then importance for banking, and importance in the field of education, and so on. So first one is the importance for the administrator or the administration purpose. So like I'm going to just express the administrator or administration purpose with the help of the example. Finance minister make use of data related to revenue and the expenditure while preparing budget, and similar, the finance minister takes decision regarding the imposing different kind of new tax schemes, expenditure schemes, and import schemes and production schemes, so on. So then second one is the importance for business, industry, or the agriculturist. So a successful businessman or the agriculturist estimate demand for or supply for a particular commodity on the basis of the relevant data. So that particular data we can represent our data with the help of the statistical. Then come to the importance in the economics. So economics depend upon the statistic to measure economic aggregates. But economic aggregates, we can collect the data of the gross national outputs and the consumption, savings, investments, expenditure, changes in the value of money. So these are the examples for the economics where we can use the statistic. And then come to the importance for the politicians. So how it is important for the politicians? So politicians play an important role in designing the economic, the social, and the education policies of the country. So if any particular politicians going to just like education policy, going to represent a new education policy, so with the help of the statistic. Then come to the importance for social reformers. How we can use this statistical into social reformers. So like I just took the example over there, dowry and the alcohol, gambling, divorce cases. There are so many cases filed of the dowry and the divorce cases. So we can easily find that data in the statistical form. And then importance for banking and insurance industry. There are many policies making by the industry of bank and insurance where we can use the statistic. And then come to the importance for statistical quantity control method. So it is very important in terms of statistical quality control method in industry, because we can take the advantage of that particular statistic to find out the production quality, whether it is accepted or not. Then come to the limitations of the statistic. There are many limitations in the statistic. First one is the study of numbers, facts only, as I described while we collect the data. So it should be only in numbers, but this is one of the limitation, because there are it does not study qualitative phenomena like honesty, friendship, wisdom, etc. And then come to the study of aggregate only. So while we do the study of statistic, so it just only collect the aggregate fact data, only quantitative aggregate fact data. It does not study any particular unit or number. And then come to the note the only method. So many a time statistic method does not suggest the best solution of a particular problem. There are various methods where we can use the another methods except the statistic. And the homogeneity of data. So while comparing the data with one to another, so there should be homogeneity, right? So data should be equal form in uniform the quality while comparing the data. And then come to the misuse of statistic is possible. This is quite obvious. While we collect the data, so there are many people those use the statistic in another purpose. So that statistical data for another purpose. It is useful, said statistic are like clay of which you can make a god or devil as you please, and then can be used by experts only, right? So while we collect the data, so you must understood you must understanding about the statistic. If you don't have, then you have to hire this experts for that particular analyze for the data. So there should be you have to knowledge about the statistic if you want to make the analysis of a particular data. So only experts can make good use of statistic, and unqualified would find it difficult to apply it. Now let us discuss about the descriptive statistic in detail. So descriptive statistic means the describing, interpretation, analysis of the data, and statistic is often categorized into descriptive and inferential statistic, as I have discussed in the previous slide. And it uses analytical methods which provide the maths to mode and predict variation, right? And it uses graph methods to help making numbers visible for cumulation purpose. So I have just described this slide like methods of the describing the characteristics of that data, and useful because they allow you to make sense of the data, and helps exploring and making conclusion about the data in order to make rational decisions, and includes calculating things such as the average of the data and its spread and the shape it produced. So this is the example of the data, like the weight of a descriptive statistic, the weight of a product in a production line, and the time taken to process an application. uh, you can describe the data into graphical display are often used along with the quantitative measures to enable clarity of that particular communication. Now come to the data collection. So kind of data, so data may be collected either from the primary sources and the from the secondary sources. So what is the primary sources, or you can say what is the primary data? Well, collect the data that are expressed first hand by someone specifically for the purpose of facilitating the study are known as the primary data, and such as original data in characters and generated in large number of surveys conducted mostly by the government, like census data. So this is the primary data example. Then come to the secondary data, any data that have been gathered earlier for some other purpose and are called we are going to use it for another purpose called the secondary data. So there are many sources of the secondary data, like company records and the government publication, industry publications, through website, through media or internet. So these are the examples of the secondary data. Then come to the classified the data. So qualitative data. First, how we are going to classify the data. First one is the qualitative data that are expressed by a non-numerical properties. Now I have expressed in the a previous slide ki number data should be numbers in numerical form only, but I have written here your data, it should be when we collect the data in qualitative form, so it is called the qualitative data, like good, bad and yes, no. So how we will use this particular data into statistical form, so we can give the good, bad numbers, like 1 for good and 0 for bad, and we can use that particular data for statistical purpose. And then quantitative data. So when our data are numerically expressed, like height, weight, marks of the students, income, expenditure, etc. So under the qualitative data, there are two types. One is the discrete data and then continued data. So what is discrete data? When the possible values are finite numbers or countable numbers only, so it is expressed as a discrete data, like numbers of students in the class. So when it is it is only in numbers, countable numbers 1 to 10. So this is the discrete data. And continued data, when data in fraction, so like height, weight of the students, right? So this is in the continue form. Now come to the universe, population and sample. So whenever we are going to collect the data, so we must understood about these terms: what is universe, what is population, and what is sample. So universe means the collection of all elements, like census, right? And population means the set of subjects of interest. Whatever data you are going to collect from the collection of the elements, so this is the population. Population doesn't mean only human beings. Population means the elements of that particular data, right? So like if we are going to collect the data of the government employees income data, so this is the population. Government employee are the population of that particular data. And then after that, it's not possible for us to collect the data from entire government employees, so we can collect the data through sample. So what is the sample over there? A subset of objects taken from the population. So what we will do here, we'll just collect the data of a few government employees. This is called the sample, and after collecting the sample, so whatever the analysis will do with this particular sample, so it represent the whole population. Right, and then the one term, that is the measurement scale. So we must aware about the measurement scale in the statistic. So these are the four level. First one is the nominal scale, second is the ordinal scale, and interval scale, and the ratio scale. So what is the nominal scale under the data? So the nominal scale, sometimes also called the qualitative type of the data, that differentiate about items or subjects only on the basis their names and the categories or quality, right? Suppose I can say the gender and the nationality, language, style, and the biological specificities. So these are the example of the nominal data. Then come to the ordinal scale data. So ordinal scale data involves data that may be arranged in some order, right? But differences about the data value either cannot be determined or are meaningless. Suppose if I'll say here, college course rating system: poor for 1, 2 for good, 3 for very good, 4 excellent, and so on, right? So these are the categories where we have given to poor to excellent. So this is the ordinal scale. Then come to the interval scale. Interval scale means that indicates order and also the distance in the order. So 0 point on the interval scale is arbitrary 0, and it does not mean that it does not mean the complete absence of anything. So under the interval data, so we cannot measure the anything which is absent. So like temperature scale, like Celsius and the Fahrenheit, and are measured by using the interval scale. Right. Then come to the ratio scale level. So ratio scale data is like interval scale data, but it has a 0 point, and a ratio can be calculated. So you will not have a negative value in ratio scale, right? So this is the conclusion which I have discussed in these slides. Statistic is a set of decision making techniques which aids businessmen in drawing the inferential from the available data, and statistic is taken from the Latin word status. And in spite of the usefulness of the statistic and the confidence of the people in the efficiency, some people have misgivings about it, and they distrust it. A competent doctor can cure the malady by making good use of the medicine, but the made medicine in the hands of an incompetent doctor becomes poison. And but in spite of it, we take measures to remove destruct, like no bias applications by experts. Thank you so much.